Although Fable 5 is back now, but when the West was switching off its most powerful AI models, China has handed some extremely capable models to the entire world, and that too almost for free. And these models are no joke by any means. The capabilities are enormous, benchmarks are pretty good, and the extremely attractive pricing is pulling a lot of Claude and GPT users towards these Chinese alternatives. Now, I have figured out the top 5 Chinese AI models which are absolutely dominating right now, causing a bit of headache to the Western companies. So, let's have a look at these models and see, are they really so good? And is the price trade-off really so big to switch from options like Fable to these Chinese alternatives? Let us get straight into it. Let us start the countdown at number 5 with Qwen 3.7 Max from Alibaba. If your work involves complex reasoning, system design, mathematical computing, or scientific work, this is the Chinese model that thinks the deepest. Qwen 3.7 Max scored 92.4% on GPQA Diamond, which is graduate level expert science reasoning. That number is genuinely exceptional. It is the kind of deep reasoning capability people were reaching for GPT 5.6 to get. Except GPT 5.6 is locked behind a government access gate that most of us cannot get through, while Qwen is one API key away right now. It carries a 1 million token context window, scores 60.6% on SWE Bench Pro, and runs at $7.50 per million output tokens. That is more expensive than its Chinese siblings, but here is the perspective that matters. GPT 5.5 costs $30 per million output. Claude Opus 4.8 costs $25. So even the priciest Chinese flagship on this list is still 3 to 4 times cheaper than the Western models. And unlike Fable 5, nobody can switch it off on us overnight. Qwen also has the widest lineup of any Chinese lab. Alibaba ships everything from a 27 billion parameter version that runs on a single consumer GPU all the way up to Max. There is also a detail that genuinely impressed me. Qwen 3.7 Max has been measured running autonomously for around 35 hours on a single task, which is even longer than the 9.5-hour autonomous runs that made Fable 5 famous before it was pulled. Now, Qwen is the deep thinker, but thinking deeply is not the same as thinking cheaply, and the next model on our list changed what cheap even means. At number 4 is DeepSeek V4, the model that reset the entire pricing conversation for everyone. DeepSeek is the lab that proved a Chinese model could be world-class and absurdly cheap at the same time, and V4 pushed that further than anything before it. The Flash version runs at 14 cents per million input tokens and 28 cents per million output. To put that in perspective, Fable 5 was charging $50 per million output before it was banned. That is not a small saving. We are talking about more than 100 times cheaper for the kind of everyday coding work most of us were doing with Fable anyway. But cheap would not matter if the model was weak. It is not. DeepSeek V4 Pro scores 80.6% on SWE Bench Verified, which ties it with Gemini 3.1 Pro as the highest open weight score in the world. On Live Code Bench, it scores 93.5%, which is number 1 globally, ahead of every model on the planet, open or closed. Read that again. On competitive coding, this free, downloadable Chinese model sits ahead of GPT 5.6, ahead of Fable 5, ahead of everything. And on Codeforce's competitive programming, it hit a rating of 3,206, which is elite human territory. So this is the picture. A model that leads the entire world on competitive coding, ties the best open weight model on real software engineering, and costs roughly 1/10 of what we were paying. It is MIT licensed, the weights are free to download, and it runs with a 1 million token context. The community sentiment around DeepSeek is the most telling part. Developers describe it as the model that made them stop feeling guilty about API bills. A lot of the people saying that are former Fable 5 users who watched their most powerful tool disappear and realized the thing they actually missed day to day, fast and cheap coding help, was sitting right here for a fraction of the price. And that is exactly what happened next, except the next model did something DeepSeek could not. It has made the agents themselves more reliable. As you move to the most crucial portion of the video, do tell me, which AI is your absolute favorite? Plus, hit that like button and press that lonely subscribe button as well. Now, this may really surprise a lot of you. At number 3 is Kimi K2.7 Code from Moonshot AI. And this one matters specifically for anyone running autonomous agents. Here is the problem Kimi solves. Most models can write good code in a single response. But when we ask an AI to run autonomously across hundreds of steps, browsing, coding, testing, fixing its own errors, holding the thread the entire time, most models drift. They lose track, they forget instructions, they break halfway through. This long horizon stability was the single biggest thing that made Fable 5 special, and it is exactly the capability we lost when it went offline. Kimi has been built specifically to fill that gap. It is a roughly 1 trillion parameter model with 32 billion active per token, tuned for long horizon task completion and multi-step tool use rather than single shot answers. Where the other models win on benchmarks, Kimi wins on agentic stability. Recoverable failure modes, consistent tool calling across long sessions, and the ability to stay coherent when a task runs for hours. It is the closest open-weight answer to the Fable-style autonomous workflow that people are still grieving. The K2.7 Code variant, released June 13th, cut its thinking tokens by about 30% compared to the previous version, which directly lowers the cost of those long agent runs. And it has a feature that genuinely stands out: native agent swarm coordination. We can spawn specialized sub-agents that collaborate. One searches, one implements, one reviews. Kimi supports up to 300 parallel sub-agents coordinating across thousands of steps. That is the kind of orchestration that, until recently, you needed a frontier proprietary model to attempt. It uses a 256K context window and ships under a permissive license, so we can self-host it. One honest flag here, and I will come back to this for several of these models. Many of Kimi's headline numbers come from Moonshot's own in-house benchmarks. There are no independent SWE bench verified results for K2.7 Code yet, so treat those specific figures as promising rather than proven. So Kimi runs the agents, DeepSeek makes them cheap, Qwen makes them think. But the next model on our list might be the most complete package of all, and it does something none of the others can do for you. Almost there. At number 2 on the list of most capable Chinese models is MiniMax M3, released June 1st. And this is the one I would point most people to if they want a single model that does almost everything. Here is what makes M3 special. It is the only model on this list that combines frontier level coding, native multimodality, and a cheap 1 million token context window in one package. It does not just read text, it natively understands images and video. So if our work involves looking at screenshots, analyzing mockups, testing user interfaces, or building browsing agents that actually see what they are doing, M3 handles all of it without bolting on a separate vision system. On the numbers, M3 scores 80.5% on SWE bench verified, which puts it right in the band with DeepSeek and Gemini 3.1 Pro. It actually edges past GPT 5.5 on the harder SWE Bench Pro test, which is notable because GPT 5.5 is one of the 2 models we are being told to use while we wait for the frontier to reopen. On GPQA Diamond, M3 scores 92.68%, nearly matching Qwen as the science reasoning leader. And it does all of this at 60 cents per million input and $2.40 per million output. That makes it the single cheapest model in the world, scoring above 80% on SWE bench verified. The reason M3 matters so much right now is that it is the closest thing to a true Fable 5 replacement for everyday work. Not because it beats Fable on raw intelligence, it does not. But Fable's appeal was never a single benchmark. It was that one model could handle almost anything we threw at it. M3 brings back that all-in-one feeling, covering coding, vision, and long documents in a single place at a price that makes experimenting basically free and without the risk of a government pulling it offline. So that is our all-rounder. But there is one model sitting at the top of nearly every serious open weight ranking right now, and it is one of the most used AI models right now. At the very top, number 1 on the list is GLM 5.2 from Zipu, which operates as Z.ai. And the timing of this one is impossible to ignore. On June 12th, the US government forced Anthropic to disable Fable 5 and Mythos 5. On June 13th, the very next day, Z.ai released GLM 5.2 as a fully open model under an MIT license. While the West was switching off its most powerful model, China handed its most powerful model to the entire world for free. For the developers who lost Fable 5 on a Friday, there was a frontier-class replacement they could download and own by Saturday. And GLM 5.2 is not just symbolically important, it is genuinely the best. On the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index, the most respected neutral cross-model ranking, GLM 5.2 is the number 1 open-weight model in the world. It scores 62.1% on SWE Bench Pro, the highest open-weight coding score that exists. It runs a 744 billion parameter mixture of experts architecture with a 1 million token context window, up from just 200,000 on the previous version. Where GLM really separates itself is long horizon agentic coding. It is built for sustained iteration across thousands of tool calls, stronger judgment on ambiguous problems, and the kind of repo-wide engineering work that used to require Fable 5 or a model like it. Multiple expert guides now say the same thing. Default to GLM 5.2 for serious coding agents unless cost or local deployment forces another choice. That is a sentence that 6 months ago people only wrote about Claude. And the pricing. GLM 5.2 runs at roughly $1.10 input and $4.10 output per million tokens. Against Claude Opus 4.8 at $5.25, that is 6 to 7 times cheaper for the highest open-weight intelligence available anywhere. And unlike GPT 5.6, which exists but sits behind a wall most of us cannot cross, GLM 5.2 is something we can use in full, today, with no waiting list and no approval process. There is one more detail that shows how serious China is about independence here. Zhipu was the first lab to train a frontier model entirely on Huawei Ascend chips, with no NVIDIA hardware at all. The US export controls that were meant to slow China down may have accelerated exactly the kind of self-reliance that produced this model. So that is the top 5. The models rolled out by China, which most of the GPT and Claude users are opting for. But before we all rush to switch everything over, there are some real caveats we need to talk about honestly. Let's have a look. Well, there are a few things we all need to keep in mind before treating these models as drop-in replacements. Because the picture is genuinely strong, but it is not perfect. And I say this as someone who has worked in AI and computational intelligence for 20 years. The enthusiasm is justified, but the caveats are real. First, on the benchmarks. Many of the most impressive numbers from these labs are self-reported. Zhipu did not publish independent SWE bench-verified results. Kimi's K2.7 Code figures come from in-house benchmarks. Self-reported scores are a known problem in OpenAI right now, and we should discount them until third parties confirm them. Where I have given numbers that come straight from the lab, treat them as promising, not proven. Second, the data question. Using the hosted APIs of these Chinese models, routes our data through servers subject to China's national intelligence law. For personal projects, that may not matter. For anything involving sensitive business data, regulated industries, or compliance requirements like GDPR or HIPAA, it matters a lot. The good news is that because most of these models are open weight, we can self-host them inside our own infrastructure and remove that concern entirely. But that requires real hardware. GLM 5.2 needs roughly 8 high-end GPUs to run at full quality. Third, the content restrictions. Every one of these models carries hard-coded restrictions on topics sensitive to the Chinese government. Independent testing confirms they decline or give aligned responses on subjects like Taiwan, Tiananmen Square, and Xinjiang. For coding work, this is irrelevant. For research, journalism, or anything touching geopolitics, it is a genuine limitation we should know about going in. And fourth, the honest bottom line on capability. The very best Chinese model still trails the very best Western proprietary models by a handful of points on the hardest benchmarks. Claude Opus 4.8 and GPT 5.5, the models we can still use, remain ahead on the most demanding real-world debugging. The Chinese models have not surpassed the absolute frontier. What they have done is reach 90% of the capability at 10% of the price with open weights we control. And for most of us, most of the time, that trade is overwhelmingly worth it. So here is where we land. 5 Chinese models, each winning on a different front. By the way, which of these 5 Chinese models are you thinking to go for? Or are you still happy the way things are going with Claude Opus 4.8 and GPT 5.5? Do share your choice in the comments. And subscribe to my channel because as soon as there is any update on any of the AI models around us, I cover that with detail and accuracy. I'll see you in the next one.